Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Peterson, filling in for Learner Vigili today as the moderator of County Executive Marc Elrich's weekly media briefing. This week, we are joined by MCPD Assistant Chief Darren Frank. But before we get to Mark and Assistant Chief Frank, wanted to have Dr. Davis, our health officer, start. Dr. Davis is currently meeting with the other state health officers, so we wanted to have her give a brief update before we send her back to her meeting. Dr. Davis, I'll turn this over to you now.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to give folks a little bit of an update on hantavirus. I know that it's on everybody's mind, but also want to combat some misinformation and hopefully provide a little bit of reassurance. So just as a little bit of background, hantavirus is a respiratory virus. It is typically spread by exposure to rodents. This particular strain is very rarely spread person to person. The only strain that is spread person to person is the Andes strain, which is the strain that was found on the cruise ship, and it originated in Argentina. We are currently monitoring, and it's been in the news already, that there were two folks in Maryland who were on a plane with people who were on the ship. So there are no confirmed cases of hantavirus in Maryland. And the people that are being monitored, again, were not on the ship. They were just in contact with people from the ship on the same flight. I want to reassure that the risk is very, very low. Again, there's no confirmed cases of hantavirus in Maryland. The people that are being monitored have not tested positive for hantavirus, nor do they have any symptoms of hantavirus. And the state actually has had no reported cases of hantavirus since 2019. And I think, we think about COVID, a virus that spreads quickly that can cause death, and a cruise ship, all of that kind of makes us think back to COVID. But it's important to remember that for a number of reasons, COVID is actually very different from hantavirus. The first being that COVID-19 was novel. Remember, we called it the novel COVID virus. We didn't know anything about it. Hantavirus has been around for a long time. We know how to test for it. We know what the symptoms are. We know how it is spread, and we know how to treat it. So it is not something that we are learning about. We're not building this ship as we fly it. This is a ship that actually we're not building this plane as we fly it. This is something that is actually well established. We know how to track and monitor it. The other big difference is that with COVID-19, we knew that it lingered in the air for a while, and you could contract it even just with casual contact. With hantavirus, you need to be a little bit closer to somebody. So it's typically when somebody's, sitting next to one another or sharing a bed or in close contact, as opposed to just kind of general community spread. The other thing is that we know who has been exposed, and we have very tight monitoring of them. So that also makes a difference. We know who was on the ship. We know who was on the plane. We have the seat numbers of people that were sitting around them. And WHO has done a really good job of coordinating with all of those different countries and being able to track and monitor folks. The last thing is that it's really important to remember in terms of differences between COVID and hantavirus is that COVID spread asymptomatically, which meant before somebody had symptoms, they could spread the virus. And so that also made it really hard to track and know, because before you were feeling sick, somebody could be exposed. With hantavirus, that really doesn't happen. Most people don't know that you don't spread hantavirus until you start showing symptoms. And people test positive for hantavirus before they show symptoms. So for the folks that are being monitored, there's a longer quarantine period of about 42 days, but they are continuing to be tested, monitored for symptoms. If they test positive, they still are usually not infectious, so they can test positive and not spread it yet until they're showing symptoms. So that picture allows us to know who's at risk, be able to monitor them, be able to isolate folks. And again, I just want to reiterate, the risk to folks is very, very low. So unless you were on the cruise ship or on a plane with somebody that was on the cruise ship, you should really be going about life as normal. And those folks who have been in contact with those folks, disease control is already reaching out to them and working directly with them. I also want to express appreciation for the state, Maryland Department of Health. They have just been, sharing information with the health officers and working really to keep us all informed of kind of what's going on, what the risks are, and just, monitoring things as they progress.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Before you go, any questions from the media for Dr. Davis? or about hantavirus here locally? Give it a moment. Any questions? All right. I do not see any questions. Or Kate Ryan, you went off on mute, so I'm going to assume you have a question.
Yes, I do. And I appreciate what you said about you don't transmit until you are symptomatic. So that should, I'm guessing, help people who said, oh my gosh, the incubation period for hantavirus is long, comparatively speaking. But this is why we don't need to be so alarmed.
Exactly. That and the fact that people tend to test positive before they show symptoms. And so for those folks that are being monitored, before they even show symptoms, we can monitor and test periodically and know if they have it. And so that also gives an extra level of protection. You can remember sometimes with COVID, you wouldn't necessarily test positive right away. And so the ability, that long incubation period actually is not worrisome. It gives us another, more opportunity to identify folks.
Got it. And then quick follow up on this. I've had questions from people who say, oh my gosh, I have a cruise scheduled. I'm worried. And are there A, situations on a cruise that should be avoided, and B, areas of travel that should be avoided? And I say that because one of the couples who has been aboard the cruise ship had been on a bird watching expedition. There was information that they were near a landfill. And actually, birders know that birds love landfills. That's why people go there. And that's where they may have picked up the contact with the rodent. Do we know that for sure yet? And again, what precautions should people take if traveling?
So I haven't heard details for sure yet on where the couple may have contracted the virus, but I think in general, if you're going to be on a cruise or vacationing in general, some good kind of caution, especially in a cruise ship where people are touching lots of things. You want to be washing your hands frequently, cleaning your hands, especially before meals. If you're going to be in a place that has lots of rodents or lots of birds, and if you're immunocompromised or older, you may want to consider wearing a mask. But again, this hantavirus is pretty rare throughout the world. It's only in that one area of the world. And so I think the risk worldwide is pretty low. I think the thing that folks should be more worried about is norovirus, which is a gastrointestinal illness that is spread by hand, mouth, spread fecally. It tends to be persistent and is hard to clean. It is not sensitive to hand sanitizer. So it just stresses again, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, especially if you are going to be eating.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any other questions? Well, Dr. Davis, we'll let you return to your meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I'll turn it over to County Executive Elrich.
Thank you.
Thank you for that briefing. And hopefully we won't hear too much about hantavirus over here after this. I thank everybody else for joining us today. So before we dive into our budget deliberations, which is certainly the most fun part of this, I wanted to first talk about our police department and public safety progress we're making. This is National Police Week, and it's a time to honor the service and sacrifices of men and women in law enforcement. Last week, I attended MCPD's annual Fallen Officer Ceremony. This event's a somber reminder of the risks our officers take in just doing the daily tasks of their job, as well as the sacrifices of their families, their friends, and their loved ones. To begin, I want to say thanks to all of our MCPD officers, their leadership, as well as our correctional officers in the Sheriff's Department and the Maryland State Police, as well as our municipal police departments and the Fraternal Order of Police for risks you take to keep all of our residents safe. Our Montgomery County Department of Police deserves a ton of praise for its tireless work protecting life and property while embracing the constitutional community policing. The results of their dedication are clear. In 2025, Montgomery County saw a 9% overall decrease in crime, including a 10% drop in crimes against persons and a 13% decrease in crimes against property, as they've managed over 825,000 service calls. That's a lot of calls. On making these safety improvements, MCPD was also the first county police department in the state of Maryland to successfully complete the International Association Chief of Police Community Trust Pledge, a set of 25 programmatic and policy implementations that aims to enhance trust between police agencies and the communities they police. To support the public safety mission, our government is making historic investments to ensure our first responders have the facilities and the tools they need and that they deserve. Our FY 27 to 32 capital improvements program includes $40 million to design and construct a new 4th District police station that replaces the obsolete building that no longer meets our needs and really isn't a very safe place for people to be in. We're also prioritizing immediate safety by funding the replacement of 1,346 body armor units and 65 ballistic SWAT vests. We're also investing in technology to strengthen our efforts, and nothing demonstrates that better than our Drone as First Responder program. Last year, this program completed over 2,100 flights, with drones reaching incident scenes first 76% of the time and providing officers with immediate information. We'll be making an announcement soon about additional enhancements to our Drone as First Responder program that are going to allow us to use drones more frequently. Through our Public Safety Joint Operations Center and Real-Time Intelligence Center, we're integrating data from over 2,000 community-registered cameras and automatic license plate readers, which yield 3 million hits for stolen vehicles and missing persons in 2025 alone. These are not just crime response programs, they're crime prevention tools. I cannot say enough about the benefit of the automatic license plate reader. The ability to get hits on vehicles as they enter the county, if they cross in front of a police car, and to identify a stolen vehicle at that point is key to preventing what is likely going to be a crime that might have proceeded had that vehicle arrived at whatever destination they were going to. It's a stolen vehicle. You should assume that the intentions aren't good, and our ability to get those cars off the road early is really, really important. So I'm especially happy with the work that's been done on that. True public safety requires a comprehensive approach. That's why we're advancing the Diversion Center and a new Justice Center to offer short-term stabilization to individuals experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, reducing the burden on our officers and the Criminal Justice Center. If you talk to the judges, they'll tell you that unfortunately they sentence a lot of people to jail, probably almost 30% of our jail population who should be in a mental health facility, but because the state doesn't have mental health facilities at the scale that we need them, they wind up in a jail, which is neither a very good treatment facility nor an appropriate setting, but it's the only setting we have. So more work needs to certainly be done on finding more appropriate settings for people who have mental health issues rather than putting them in a jail in the first place. We're also investing in future of the force by establishing a women's leadership group to mentor female officers and by funding a new outdoor firearms training center that emphasizes modern standards for de-escalation and decision-making under stress. Anyone considering a career in this service, we're ready for you with a starting salary of over $70,000 and a $20,000 hiring bonus. Our commitment to public safety is unwavering, and our police partners is building a safer, more equitable Montgomery County together. And another sweetener in terms of recruitment is when you go through our training, you wind up with the 60 credits of college credit, which means unlike it's been up until now, you could not get on our force until you first had those 60 credits. Getting those 60 credits as a result of our training is going to enable us to attract people who otherwise would have come here. But when they found out they had to get 60 credits first, they went to other departments that didn't require it. The University of Maryland looked at our training program, certified it, and said, you will get college credits for going through this. So it's a big boost to recruitment, and I think it's worth calling out. And again, it's another example of something the police department did and initiated with the University of Maryland in order to make it possible. So folks in that department think about a lot more than what we normally think a police department does. They really are forward thinking, wondering how do you do our jobs better and how do we build, a better partnership in recruiting people from our community. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'm pleased to welcome Darren Frank, Assistant Chief of Police for MCPD. Thank you, Chief Frank, for your 30 years of service and experience across all the MCPD bureaus.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Appreciate being here. I really appreciate you mentioning the Peace Officer Memorial Week. The service, Peace Officer Memorial Day is Friday, the 15th. Tonight is the vigil. And our department has had a very defining role in the event since its inception. It started in 1962, but the first service was in 1982. But our officers have been part of the groups that welcomes the thousands of survivors that arrive at Reagan National Airport. We meet them at their plane and escort them to their buses to get them to the host hotel. Our folks also escort them to the vigil and escort them to the Capitol service. So we create a very unique bond, and there are many people that we see year after year that remember us and are part of that family that remembers the sacrifice. As you mentioned, you did attend our service last week, and we're thankful for that. We honored our 19 fallen officers and reminded once again the families that we won't forget their sacrifice, whether it was in a vehicle accident, whether it was arresting a robber. We will always remember them because very few sign up to do this job. And unfortunately, a few of them don't make it home at the end of their shift. The crime stats you mentioned, we're very proud of our progress. Again, it's a mix of technology and really supporting our officers that are working very hard. Despite being down a number of officers, especially in patrol, we still have folks answering the calls, going out with those drones, going out with the LPRs, making investments in the community as far as community policing. You hit on some great numbers from last year. I want to highlight a couple more. So for 2025, we had a 17% reduction in burglary across the table. We had a 25% reduction in theft of auto parts. It sounds small, but that is such a problem for our residents and really disrupts their life. We had a 15% drop in robbery. And each district is unique in its own. I oversee all the commanders that oversee our 6 districts. And each of the districts have done some very good work. The first district in 2025, a 36% reduction in auto theft for them, 26% reduction in robbery. For the second district, burglary was down 21%. That's Bethesda. 31% down in robbery. The third district, 34% reduction in thefts from auto parts. Auto theft itself was down 16%. Burglary in the fourth district down, really some really great numbers here. 35% down in burglary in the fourth district, which is Wheaton. 51% down in theft from vehicles. 40% down in theft from auto parts. And 25% down in auto theft. Our fifth district working hard on auto theft. They're down 19% for 2025. And then the sixth district, 28% down in burglary, 36% down in auto theft, and 26% down in robbery. So all in all, it was a very good year. Now you're only as good as your last year. We're continuing that trend into 2026. Right now, we're trending 16% down on total offenses, and you had mentioned the crimes against persons and property. Right now, again, it's a long year, but right now we're 8% down in crimes against persons, 22% down in crimes against property. And very significant action going on in burglaries, robberies, shoplifting, and theft from vehicles. Those numbers are even down further, which is contributing to the whole. So all of that is made possible by our officers and the technology that we've given them and the support that we've given them. Our concerns for this year as we move forward, we do see an uptick in auto thefts. Our community policing projects that we worked with Kia and Hyundai to bring them in to reprogram our residents' cars. That worked. Now, unfortunately, because of social media and some other things and the ability of folks to steal cars still easily, we're seeing a trend there pick up. So we're working on that one. Our theft from autos, our theft of auto parts is always a concern, as well as shopliftings that we're seeing. So we continue to work on that. And in addition, there's 2 new trends, and we've talked about it with you before. The car meetups and takeovers that we've seen, obviously the one in Bethesda not too long ago, we made 3 arrests on that, which is great progress. for vandalizing our officer's car, but we're working on further enhancing our ability to respond to those. What we've seen is at these car meetups, there are guns, there are drugs, there are assaults. That's not something we want in our community. We have a task force internally that are working on how to deal with that. And then the last thing, teen takeovers. I know we've seen that in the DC area and some other areas. So we're working on planning for that to avoid those kind of situations where suddenly 200, 300 teens, young adults surge into an area and there's general mayhem. So we're working on a response to that. We've been successful so far and we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Assistant Chief. Thanks, Mark. Let's stop there for a second before Mark continues on. Any questions for Assistant Chief? Kate, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Assistant Chief, two questions. One on the drop in thefts from autos. I know in the past, the part of the issue has been unlocked. When it's easy to get in, they're in. Or if I've got something bright and shiny resting on my dashboard or in a seat, they're going to get in. Are you seeing is owner change helping that at all? Or are there simply fewer happening? And then I have an unrelated question, but I'll let you ask that one or answer that one first.
So a couple things. First, we have some enforcement efforts that we've done. We've been able to really, as we've learned about these trends and how they work, we've been able to put resources in the right place to disrupt them and affect them. The second part is our residents are becoming more educated, not leaving things in their cars that they can grab, and also locking their cars. But I will tell you, there are still holdouts. We've dealt in some neighborhoods where folks said, and rightfully so, look, I understand. Residents say we shouldn't have to lock our car doors. Unfortunately, the reality of where we are and things that are happening in our community, let's make the right decision. I understand we shouldn't have to, but let's make the right decision and lock our stuff, make sure people can't steal it. It's too easy of a crime for people to grab things. So those two things there, I think are really what's resulting in that reduction. And I apologize. Did I miss the third part, Kate?
No, I think that was the heart of it. And then apologies, this is a little out of left field, but just the other day, two council members, one in Rockville, another in Gaithersburg, were saying that they'd like to see SROs come back into schools. Are there any plans to change the role of the CEOs as they are right now?
So we continue to work with Dr. Taylor and MCPS on how best our CEOs can serve the schools, and we work with the principals, and certainly we have great discussions with County Executive Elrich on our footprint there. I think it's clear we all believe that there is a positive impact that officers can have on the school community. So again, we work with our stakeholders to figure out what's best and to move resources where we need to and adjust, and we'll continue to do that with the county executive and with the MCPS.
Thank you very much.
Just to be clear, Kate, the policy on schools actually has to ultimately be set by the superintendent of schools, and that's state law. We worked with the superintendent, the previous superintendent, and with this superintendent. I don't know why people keep repeating this, but all the high schools have SROs assigned to them, or whatever we're calling them now. The only difference is, they are there at the beginning of the day, they are out in public and in the building. At the end of the day, they're out in the building when kids are in the halls and milling around. During the lunch periods, they're out in the building, actively in the building. So it is not the case that there are schools without SROs. During the day, outside of those time periods, I said, they may go visit one of the other schools in the cluster, but it's the schools that are close by that the SROs are assigned to. So it's just simply not the case. And I just want to give an example. There was a shooting in a school, and that shooting was preceded earlier in the day by the same person with a gun pointing it at another student. An SRO was in the building at that time. the student did not go to the police officer. And any other student who may have known that did not go to the police officer. So that person started with one incident, had the gun all day long, and then it culminated in the shooting. But I use that to make the point that there's no automatic thing that having an officer in the building is going to mean they're going to see an incident when it happens. And if that kid had pulled the trigger instead of simply pointing, you would have had a shooting earlier in the day with an SRO there. So I just encourage people not to feel like this is a panacea. SROs are human beings. They're not super people. They can't be everywhere. They can't look at a crowd of people. They don't have a spidey sense to detect who the bad ones are. So they do their best, but it is not going to guarantee that nothing happens. And I don't like it when people kind of grandstand on this and act like if only we did this, we'd have a good situation. We're going to have problems as long as guns are so readily available, and they're so readily available to kids. And in one of the recent incidents, we wound up with a printed gun. So they're getting it from the new technology where you can print it on a 3D printer. So this is way more complex, but we've been committed to making sure we have officers in those high schools, and we're not backing away from that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Catalina with Telemundo, do you have a question for Assistant Chief?
Hi, yes, I do. Catalina with Telemundo and NBC4 here. You mentioned an uptick in auto thefts, and that's something that I've been noticing in the reports that you guys put out. I know you mentioned social media trends. Do you want to talk just briefly about how you tackle this situation when these trends happen and bring back, an uptick in this sort of crime? And what do you have to say to people that are being impacted by this or that fear they might be, targeted in this sense?
Right. So, as far education is a big part of dealing with this, when we see these trends, getting information out to the public about what's occurring, letting them know if their car has a vulnerability. So we try and put that information out there, because there are things that car manufacturers can do that will make the cars more difficult to steal. So we try and provide that information. Obviously, we recommend alarms. We recommend, back in the old days, we recommended the club. So there are prevention things that we do. Also, again, I will say this, again, prevention-wise, education, you can't leave your car warming up in your driveway. You can't, when you go run into the 7-Eleven or the Starbucks, leave your car running outside of it. We see a number of thefts from that. So it's really becomes smart behaviors by us that will help disrupt this activity, in addition to the enforcement work that we're doing as we get involved with this stuff. We also want to educate parents. We see a lot of young people, and one of the things that I didn't touch on is our concerns over juvenile crime. Because juveniles, without involvement in the criminal justice system and getting diversion and getting help and getting treatment, getting whatever resources there are out there, unfortunately, they make it to adulthood and their behaviors don't change. So talking to parents about these things to make sure that they are knowing what their kids are looking at on social media, knowing what they're talking about, knowing where they are, because we do see a number of those events too, where kids take a car on a joyride. And it's very dangerous. Just the other night, we pulled an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 14-year-old out of a stolen car. It's happening. They're doing it, and we need everyone to work on this, law enforcement, community, parents, to further disrupt this.
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up, and thank you for sharing that. That's alarming, to say the least. But can you talk a little bit more about what the police department is doing? I know you mentioned your enforcement. Do you guys focus on certain areas where we're seeing that this is happening most and put more
Yes, we have
patrolling in?
So we have a monthly, we call them stat meetings, where we review trends, we review where crimes are occurring, and the commanders are responsible for addressing those areas. And while we meet monthly to discuss it, to talk about results and what we're going to do in the next month if we didn't address the situation, the commanders and I meet weekly to talk about the problems in their districts. and getting them resources, what they're focusing on, the different types of crimes. And again, auto theft is one of our big ones right now. So we continue to move resources around, whether or not that's with our plainclothes officers, or we have a central auto theft unit that investigates trends and series in that, and they operate out of our major crimes division, so they work on it as well. So we have a number of resources available to us, and we move them to where the trends are or where we anticipate the trend will move.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Kate, back to you. Your hands up back up again.
Yes,
Sorry.
and I'm sorry. Two things you mentioned that sparked a question. One, Assistant Chief, you mentioned the uptick in auto thefts. Are you seeing those? And I know you gave us by district, but of these very young kids getting into these cars, are you seeing them in a particular area? And the other part of it was you said we've made progress on the Hyundai and the Kia situation, but there's another trend that they're just easy to steal. What makes them, without giving away how they're doing it, but what makes them so easy to steal?
So as far as where we're seeing the juveniles in the vehicles, it's all over the county. We've seen it in every one of the districts, whether it's Germantown or Bethesda or Wheaton. We've seen it in all of them. As far as what makes them easier, look, we still have work to do on the Kia and Hyundai. There's additional programming that needs to be done. There are still many people out there that haven't gotten their car programmed and fixed, even though all the efforts that have been done by the manufacturer and us. So we need to continue to work on that. But again, and I did hit on some of them: leaving keys in the car, leaving the car unlocked, leaving it warmed up, turned on somewhere where someone can just get into it. We see movements and trends, and I'd have to pull my notes on the trend we're seeing right now in different makes and models as people figure out a way to do them. I will say, not a theft from auto, but right now our PIO office, I'm sorry, our public information office is going to be pushing out information to reference theft of catalytic converters from Prius. Because we're seeing a lot of that occurring, which is, again, a huge disruption. So we'll educate as we see things. But I did want to mention the Prius thing, because there are things we can do to owners can do to prevent the theft of those catalytic converters, which are very valuable due to the materials inside them.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. I will say that what we're also going to do is we're going to put the link to the 2025 annual report that the Chief and Mark were referring to in our chat, so everyone can go back and look at that report if you missed any of the numbers that we're talking about. Earl, before we move on, is there anything else you want to add here with all the work that you've done and do in public safety?
No, I popped on to add on to the CEO conversation, but I think Assistant Chief Frank covered it very well with the county executive as well. No.
Okay, thanks, Earl. All right, Mark, back to you. Let's talk about some budget items.
All right, and thank you, Darren, for being here today. The budget straw vote is going to happen on Thursday. That's, I guess, the beginning of the culmination of this budget process. And I think things are shaping up to kind of be a lose-lose-lose situation for everyone. It's going to be a loss of higher tax bills for nearly 180,000 homeowners. That accounts for about a third of our residents, higher than my original recommendation due to the elimination of the income tax offset credit. You had to have a house that was worth over $1 million for my tax proposal to be the equivalent of what's happening when every single homeowner, condo owner, loses a $692 credit that's on your property tax bill. And your property taxes go up $692. That wasn't necessary under my proposal. It's going to be a loss for the county government, as we're projecting $222.4 million less revenues in our coffers over the next 2 years because the structural changes they want to make to the taxes is actually going to dig the county a bigger crater. Projected revenue loss this year is 64 million. Projected revenue loss next year is almost $160 million. The biggest losers in this entire budget are going to be the students and teachers of MCPS. I encourage everyone in the media, if you haven't yet taken a look at Dr. Taylor's list of reductions, we're going to put that list in this chat. It's critically important that everyone is aware of what's on this list and how detrimental it could be to the students and family. But that's not the only thing. I've got to say that I was very careful. I made cuts to my budget. I asked my staff to particularly make cuts if it didn't involve reductions in services to people. But what I did add to the budget were some additions to services that are based on some of the changes coming from the Trump regime. For example, we're anticipating that some thousands of people will lose their health insurance in Montgomery County, unable to afford to pay for it. They will become dependent on the county's clinic system, and the county clinics, which have already seen an uptick in people going to use them, and not the usual suspects now because it's unemployed people who were working before, not just an immigrant population who wasn't allowed to get health insurance. We have people who can't afford health insurance. And they're going to be coming to our clinics, and some of the money we put in this budget was meant to address it. We put money in to address the increase in homelessness because as the courts are now working faster and clearing the backlogs of eviction cases, these are cases that go back to COVID. So they're more than a few years old. We're going to see more people put out on the street. We've been very aggressive about trying to make sure we get people off the street. It is not cheap, but more expensive and more problematic is leaving people on the street. So that's going to hamper our ability to fund programs that address homelessness. There are any number of other things that would either inhibit our ability to deal with some of the problems we deal with. Some things are critical improvements we need to our IT infrastructure, which when I came here, we had one of the most backward IT infrastructures probably anywhere. And we've been working over the years. We've never been able to get enough money in one tranche to fix this all at once. So we keep plugging away at it, but it's necessary that we keep making progress on modernizing this infrastructure. I've seen proposals that could mean that the police car readers, the ones that identify license plates and tell you somebody's driving a stolen car, that they would cut money that would go to the license plate readers. That's not a good thing to do. I mean, you may be saving some residents some tax dollars. You're also taking away a tool we need in order to identify who's in the county with bad intentions. So this is not good. But it's not bad for everyone. The only group that really wins are the developers, as the council's not bad for everyone. The only group really is the developers in Montgomery County. My proposal in raising property taxes, about 1 out of every 4 cents in the property tax comes from commercial property. When you don't do the property tax and instead you choose to take away homeowners' income tax credit, that means all the money you're raising is on homeowners. None of the money you're raising is on commercial property. Why does that matter? Well, you might want to know that Montgomery County has the lowest commercial property rates in the entire district area, the lowest. So for those of you who are into being low and must think that it must be great to be the lowest, we have no economic activity that would correlate with being the lowest tax jurisdiction in the DC region. If you went to the District of Columbia and you had commercial property, you would pay between $1.66 and $1.89. That is between 63 cents and 86 cents higher than Montgomery County. And if you went to Fairfax County, you would pay $1.27. And if you were in Tysons or Reston, you'd be paying close to $1.50. So all around us, commercial property pays more than they do in Montgomery County. And yet this council refuses to increase rates on commercial property. We had legislation that we had been pushing, that the state got behind, and that MACA, which is the Maryland Association of Counties, which it means it's representative of more Republican counties than Democratic counties. We had legislation that was supported that would allow Montgomery County and the other counties to split the tax rates so that you could have a different tax rate on commercial property than you do on residential property. That would have enabled us to pay for many things in the budget that are infrastructure that really benefits commercial property. And we would have enabled us to pay for it with taxes on commercial property and would have lessened the burden on residential property. I have tried to get the council for 3 years to support that legislation that was in the state legislature. They would not support it. And the legislation only would have given them the power to create a policy. It didn't dictate what the tax rates had to be. It just said, Montgomery County, you're free to have differential tax rates. And this council is not even interested in getting the power to have differential tax rates. So the burden lies on residents because that's the only place we can put it now. I cannot tax commercial property without taxing residents as well. It doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. By the same token, there was a more progressive income tax proposal that the council also did not weigh in on. I supported, as did others, legislation that would have allowed counties to go up to a 3.7% income tax, not so that everybody would pay 3.7, but so we could have truly progressive graduated income taxes where obviously the wealthiest would pay the highest and those without as much would not pay so much. We would have been able to more fairly balance income taxes among all income bands than we do now when our rate is 3.2% for everybody. Now the council is looking at 3.3% for a group of people. I had proposed 3.3% for everybody, but gave a credit to offset that tax impact on households making under $50,000 in income, taxable income. But the county council would not support the legislation that would have let us do truly progressive taxes. So, we've had alternatives. This county could have figured its way out of this problem. And here we are stuck having this debate. We hear a lot about, living within our means. But living within our means, they treat it as if this is some kind of magic or something given from God. Living within our means is what we decide. Montgomery County's decided that its means are defined by a $1.03 tax rate. You might be interested to know that in Frederick County, they define their means with a $1.11 tax rate. And in Howard County, they define their means with a $1.34 tax rate. And in Prince George's County, their tax rate's $1.37. So there's no magic to staying within your means. And our means do not match the increasing needs in the county. And you can see that in this budget. If I could have balanced this budget without a tax increase, I would have. The council is finding it very difficult to balance the budget, so they've already given up on doing it without a tax increase. They're just going up there and saying, we're not increasing the tax rate. Well, that's nice. You're not increasing the tax rate, but you're increasing the taxes by getting rid of the income tax credit. So for many people, the loss of the income tax credit is far more than what my income tax rate would have done. So we're going to see regressive tax cuts. We're going to get cuts to services, and we're going to see layoffs. The superintendent of schools came in. They said every $10 million that's not in this budget lays off 100 school employees. These are not people who do no work. It's going to get into people who provide services to the school. So if the council's looking for $30 to $80 million in cuts, that means layoff of between 300 and 800 people. And if you don't think that's going to have a consequence on education, you're dreaming. If you told me that this was going to be the outcome when I proposed my budget back in March, I wouldn't have believed that this is the direction we're going to go. This chart here shows what the tax rate equivalent is for homes with different assessed values. So you can see that if your house is assessed at $400,000, adding $692 to the bill, which is what the council is going to do, is the equivalent of a 17.3 cent tax rate. Remember, I was proposing 6.3. If your property is worth $650,000, it's a 10.6 cents tax increase. And only if you're at the $2 million mark, then you actually are saving. I would have had a 6.2%, 3% increase, and you're only getting the equivalent of a 3.5%. So again, the benefits from this are going into highest earners in the county, and the burden on this is being put on people with more modest or lower incomes. Again, not a progressive way to handle taxes, but apparently that's what the council wants to do. Last week, I shared this graphic in my newsletter, and a video message received a lot of attention, and it proves how regressive the council's approach to this budget is. For home assessed at $600,000, removal of the ITOC represents 12.7% on your property tax bill. We looked at a hypothetical retiree in Leisure World, somebody with a house that has a value of about or $400,000 and has an income of around $50,000. My proposal on the left would have increased their taxes $252 on property, $50 on the income tax, and they would have a total $302 increase. And I fully fund the education budget with that. With the council's proposal, that person gets a $692. So they talk all the time about protecting our older residents from taxes and what can we do, and wring their hands, and they come up with a proposal that actually raises it more than I raise it. The person would get a $200 reduction in income taxes from the council's proposal, though I don't know what their final proposal is going to be now. So they would have at least a net increase of $492, which is more than my increase. So, and for the $492, you still don't get fully funded schools. I use this example of retired and Leisure World for real because we get a lot of calls from Leisure World who are concerned about this. Typical retiree in Leisure World obviously is going to see this larger increase, and I wish the council would consider. On the other hand, if somebody had $500,000 in income and a $2 million home, my tax proposal would have raised their taxes by $1,760. But this is on somebody with a $500,000 income. The council president's proposal would raise it by $592. Kate Stewart's proposal would raise it by $992, and Councilmember Mink would raise it by $800. So mine is the highest rate on the wealthiest people, but it's what you need to do if you're trying to balance this out against multiple incomes in a county and trying to tread lightly on the folks with the lowest incomes. Commercial property is my favorite. Here's a $20 million commercial property would have paid an additional $12,000 under my proposal. Under the council president's proposal, there is no tax increase for them. And under Kate Stewart's proposal, it's a $4,000 increase, and Kristen Mink's proposal is a $6,000 increase. Not only is the council doing this, but you got to add this to other things. I think I showed people last week there in the message I sent home. There's a property on top of the Grosvenor Metro Station. It is assessed at over I think it's $120 million, assessed for a lot of money. It would have paid over $1.1 million in taxes. But the council created for the Metro, 15-year tax exemption if you build on top of WMATA property in a Metro. So this massively expensive building, which is mostly luxury housing with some affordable housing, is paying no taxes, and a building next to it with almost the identical price tag, identical valuation, is paying about $1 million in taxes. There's nothing fair about that. There's nothing reasonable about giving the developers, because WMATA is not getting this tax benefit. This tax benefit's going to the developers there. There's no reason to hand them $1 million. And the council's doing this on this policy that if you convert an office building to residential, you pay no taxes for 20 years. So they're bemoaning the lack of revenue and economic activity. And here they are giving away whole buildings that don't pay any taxes, which means anything that these folks would have contributed to our tax base that would offset residential contributions are going to have to be made up by residential contributions. Under the council president's proposal, there's no increase at all on the commercial property, and schools face deep cuts. So when people say we just live within our means, I think residents deserve to ask, what does that actually mean? Does that mean we continue to underfund schools? Does it mean pushing more costs onto homeowners by shielding large commercial properties? Does it mean cutting services at the same time we're dealing with uncertainty coming from the federal government? And, I get people all the time saying to me, why is it taking so long for us to fix our roads? And, going back to when I first came on the council under Ike Leggett, we were in a situation where it would take almost 100 years for us to fix the roads in Montgomery County. We're not 100 years now, but we're decades still. Without the ability to raise enough money, you don't have enough money in a budget to pay for all the things you need. My goal has been to try to deal honestly with taxes, to try to spread the burden more fairly among residents and commercial property like other people do, so that we can address school needs, we could address our transportation needs, we could address our housing needs. But if we're not going to look at any options and just say the only option we have is to talk about our tax rate, then we're not going to do much of anything. And it's really a disservice. I mean, we're here not, at least not for me, the most important thing is not setting a tax rate. The most important thing is what services and what quality of life do I deliver to the residents? And what are the taxes? What do we need in terms of funding in order to deliver the things that people want and need? And if the discussion comes down to nothing more than how are we going to raise taxes? How are we going to raise taxes? Then we don't ever get to the real questions, is how do we address the needs of people in this county? And I'm always going to be committed to focusing on what do people need and how do we get there, not acting like the only thing that matters is taxes. No jurisdiction around us is taken as right-wing and a conservative approach to taxes as Montgomery County has. Not when Frederick, Howard County, and Prince George's County in our own state have much higher tax rates than us, and not when Virginia has much higher tax rates, and not when all of them have higher commercial rates. We ought to be having a different discussion. We ought to be saying, what do we need? And then figure out how we get there. Painful as it might be. Finally, if you pay close attention, they're dealing with the same issues that I dealt with. They started out by bemoaning the fact there's a tax increase that they can't figure out how to cut enough stuff out of the budget not to have a tax increase. Because when you get down to it, at the end of the day, they're looking at the same thing I did. For me to go deeper into cuts, I would have gone deeper into programs. You'd be looking at libraries, you'd be looking at recreation, you'd be looking like, well, they're looking at, for example, police services and things like, license plate readers. Those are the things you go into when you try to make your budget match your unwillingness to budge on taxes. So I wish we were having a different discussion. It would be nice to be talking about, what are the things we need to do in this county and how do we pay for it, and come up with some creative solutions. And I should add also, since I do talk about economic development, they actually cut money for the incubator and they cut money for an economic development fund. So the incubator grows jobs and businesses in Montgomery County. If you're going to disinvest from the investment you make to grow jobs and businesses in the county, how exactly do you expect to get more jobs and businesses in the county? If we're talking about growing our own local economy here, we've basically cut the knees out of doing that. And it's just another one of those decisions that doesn't make sense to me. My budget had a proposal to create growth districts, similar to what you find in Northern Virginia counties, a special taxing district for commercial property that would help fund infrastructure. The council said they couldn't talk about anything that was a change to the tax structure during the budget process. Well, what exactly are they doing now? Changing the entire tax structure? That conversation they could have, something that would mimic what Northern Virginia did and give us more tools that they can't have a conversation for. I tried to convince them to increase our bonding ability. They denied taking that on, that we have no way of addressing either school repairs or the need to build transportation. I want to reiterate something I said before. Two things I said before. One is our bonding capacity is where it was 20 years ago. That means that we can't buy what we bought 20 years ago. We're buying less because the things cost more to buy, whether it's fixing a school, fixing a road, building a transportation project, all those things cost more. The school system, for all those years, for most of those years until the last 2 or 3, was dealing with growing enrollment. And so most of their money went into expanding school capacity. And because the bonding limits were where they were, the school system never came in for enough money to do all the repairs they needed, plus address the expanding of capacity. So we're in a situation we've had to choose between capacity expansions and repairs. We chose expansions. Repairs got neglected. Now the school system's brought us about $2.5 billion of neglected repairs that need to be done. They're not asking for it all at once because that would be futile and pointless, but they have asked us to start ramping up the amount of money we put in a significant way. This budget will not do that. So we will continue to have schools, including schools that will have to be closed because they will not have air conditioning and it'll be too hot to be in these schools, and it's going to create more problems for us. So there's a lot out there that we're headed for, and I think, talking about all these problems rather than vexating over the taxes before you talk about the problems you're trying to solve might have been really helpful. And I said I want to give the council president for at least backing down and coming up with a more deliberative process on what's going to be cut from the budget. Originally, we were not going to know about who voted for what cuts. At least it appears as of right now that you'll actually see people voting on what they're cutting and what they don't want to cut. So that should be interesting. In the previous, well, not last year, Kate Stewart did not do that last year, but the previous two council presidents basically had a meeting after the last budget meeting where the residents saw everybody raise their hands and say all these things are on the list on our budget, and then have a meeting on the following Tuesday, I think, where only the council members' aides came into the meeting, and then they voted on what cuts to make, and nobody knew who voted for what. At least we're not doing that this time. And another,
Hey, Mark,
yeah,
before you go on, can we pause for a moment? We're running late, and I just wanted to make sure we get any questions about this budget in for anyone
sure.
that wants to go. So, anyone have any questions for Mark about the budget process? Catalina, please go ahead there first.
Thank you very much. Yes, mostly it's just one message you have for parents that are, out here in the county and are worried. I spoke to parents today who tell me that their kids have been using, these counseling services and these programs where we might see some of those cuts to personnel. So what's your message to them directly? They tell me, they were telling me this is like the most important thing to them, and to see this amount of cuts possibly happening soon is just terrible.
Look, I mean, you've got a couple days to contact the council. You can write them, you can call the offices, but the most effective thing is probably write a letter and say, hey, don't do this. These things are too important. It's simple. It's the way this stuff works.
Thank you. Catalina, do you need anything else? I guess you're good. Kate Ryan, we'll go to you. Catalina, if you have any other follow-up questions, just raise your hand. We'll get back to you again. Kate Ryan, WTOP.
Thank you very much. My understanding is that Councilmember Stewart says that the new plan would benefit Moore County residents, and this is according to the Banner reporting from just now, than the current policy. According to her, 35 to 40% of county residents are renters and ineligible for the current tax credit, and that 75% of county residents would get a tax break under their new plan. How do you respond to that?
Well, everybody gets an income tax increase, and they're not paying the property tax. So I'm not sure that it's exactly the way she portrays it. And, there are certainly a lot of seniors who are in their homes who are going to be affected by this. I did not feel, my tax plan, a person making $50,000 and then on the income tax would have wound up paying an extra, I think, $50. And if you made $50,000, I had a tax credit that would have exempted them from that. So the only incomes that would have been affected would have been incomes above $50,000. I think the cuts and the effect of theirs is a lot heavier hit on people than what I'm doing.
Got it. And again, in your discussions with them, I'm assuming there were discussions back and forth. Why the reluctance to boost commercial taxes at all, just to kind of make them on par? It's one thing if your neighbors aren't, as low as you are, beating you on those, but apparently we are not. What's the problem there?
Good question. I've asked that for years. I've been raising this issue, not just my entire term as county executive. I was raising this issue back when I was on the county council. Back on the county council, you could say you got too many people who are beholden to developers to bite the hand that feeds them. It's a little different now because you have more publicly financed candidates, but you do have candidates who are looking at their futures at seats that don't involve public financing. So you could argue that maybe some people are, securing their future by demonstrating that they're reliable and trustworthy on this issue. I don't get it, frankly, because it has totally paralyzed the county. Virginia made this decision in 2012, and it was done when the legislature in Richmond was all Republican and the governor was Republican. And they basically, they needed to grow, they needed to build transportation. They knew that, and the developers knew it. So the developers walked down to Richmond hand in hand with the council and said, we need this taxing authority. And they did it. And, I'm sure Scott could share with you the Governor Godwin's letter, I think 2013, where he literally predicts what the result was going to be for Tyson's Corner of their ability to have differential taxing, how it was going to radically change the ability of Virginia to grow. And they made that decision. And I never understood why, for all the blather about Virginia this and Virginia that, no one seems willing to engage and say, well, what exactly did Virginia do that made it possible for them to attract all these businesses? We all got the same information from the people who serve us at COG that, transportation was considered to be the biggest impediment in the DC region to economic growth. Virginia read the message, took the message, and did something about it. Montgomery County councils never did anything about it. And their favorite refrain would be, well, if we do something, then we'll never get any money from the state. And so we've created the perfect box. The state has not had the resources to give us the money. So we get about $27 million, for example, a year for BRT. I'm glad we get it, but you really can't build the system on $27 million a year. Northern Virginia counties get hundreds of millions of dollars for things. So I am baffled at the unwillingness to say, particularly since you're the low-priced child. I've said this before. We're the cheapest state in the region, and if companies aren't coming in here, aren't you looking at what we're doing wrong, as opposed to insisting let's try to make it cheaper? I mean, they've doubled down on making it cheaper to develop in Montgomery County. Virginia's not doing that. It's baffling to me, and it's bad policy.
Thank you.
Ms. Jacoby, Bethesda Today.
Hello. My question is about the property tax side of this equation. Councilmember Stewart yesterday sort of floated the idea of reconsidering having a smaller property tax increase than what you proposed, combined with that, progressive income tax structure plan. I understand your preference would obviously be for the council to move forward with your tax plan, but are you, in lieu of that, are you supportive of them looking again at the property tax rate?
Look, yes, you should look again at the property tax rate. I know she's got a 2-cent proposal. I think another council member has a 3-cent proposal. But if you couple that with the income tax, the progressive, I appreciate the instinct to be progressive, but this is totally the wrong year to try to do that. You're in a year where you're struggling to meet your budget needs on a normal budget. And if you do what they're going to do if you do what's being proposed on the income tax, you're going to create a crater. You've actually made the hole deeper, and you've made next year's hole enormous. And why you would do that, I don't know. I would wait to next year. I'd support legislation that put more progressivity into the income tax. And then I'd come up with a decent tax plan where the higher income taxes offset any reduction in taxes in the lower income brackets. But we're not doing that here. So we're just making it harder for the county to raise money at a time that it's already hard enough to raise money. I don't understand why you do that in the middle of a budget where you're struggling to pay for the things that are in the budget. And it's not like people are debating the basis of the budget. I'll point it, the council members voted for every damn thing in this budget unanimously. You look at the last 2 years, everything in this budget was voted except for the enhancements I made this year. But they were for enhancements in programs that the council voted to have in the budget before. So this creation is something that we actually both created. Now they wanted to call it my budget. Last year when they're done with it, it's like, this is the council's budget. It's our budget. We both had broad consensus on what needed to be in the budget. We put those programs in the budget. And they're finding it very difficult to cut. So my view is, do what you need to do on taxes this year to get us through this year. Support next year getting a change in the property tax and maybe getting the income tax change so that the council next year can make decisions that would truly shift it. You could walk back some of the increases in property tax that you do this year if you can rebalance the property taxes next year. I would support that in a heartbeat. But you got to look at the problem you have and not deepen the problem, not wind up with more people not getting services. That's not going to play out well in the community.
Thank you.
And back to Catalina. Go ahead. Did you
I'm
have
back.
another
Thank you.
follow-up?
Yes.
Okay. No, go ahead, Catalina.
Thank you. I was just wondering, I don't know if there's somebody, a Spanish-speaking person that could give me just a quick somebody in Spanish for a newscast.
Luisa, you want to help us out and habla español? Gracias.
Sí, Catalina, con mucho gusto.
Luisa, muchas gracias. Quería preguntarte pues que me hables brevemente sobre el impacto en el budget de las escuelas específicamente y el mensaje a los padres que en este momento están muy preocupados diciendo que estos programas donde se verán cortes impactan directamente a sus hijos. Por favor, si me puedes dar un sonido.
Claro que sí, mira, a esos padres con sus preocupaciones lo que tenemos que decir es que de verdad sí es muy preocupante. El presupuesto que puso el Ejecutivo era para apoyar completamente, para que no viéramos estos impactos tan drásticos para nuestros colegios. Así que la petición es coger esos miedos y convertirlos en acción. Por favor, hoy mismo contacten a el consejo, hablen con ellos, díganle que no quieren ver este impacto a nuestros colegios y que apoyen el presupuesto que puso el Ejecutivo.
Gracias, Luisa. Y el Ejecutivo hablaba de aumentar los taxes por otros lados y así como que compensar el dinero que faltaría, ¿no? Que ahora será en cortes. ¿Puedes explicarme un poco de eso? ¿Qué es lo que él propuso anteriormente que ha estado negado, ¿verdad? Por decirse así, por parte del Consejo.
Claro que sí, el Ejecutivo puso un presupuesto de incrementar impuestos de 6 centavos que serían directamente solo para nuestros colegios. Esta solución no solo era para algo de lo inmediato, de poder ayudar a nuestros colegios en lo que nos necesitan en este año y este momento, sino para apoyarlos en el futuro. Este sería un impuesto solo para los colegios, fondos que serían solo para nuestros colegios, para asegurarnos que no solo en este momento, sino en años que vemos en el futuro, seguían apoyados.
Y ese impuesto iba a ser directamente para los residentes del condado de Montgomery, pero el Consejo pues no aprobó esta solicitud del Ejecutivo.
El Consejo decidió no seguir la recomendación del Ejecutivo y por eso lo que estamos viendo esta semana y en este momento, hoy mismo, es de que están tratando de tomar unas decisiones muy difíciles de qué cortar, incluyendo el presupuesto de nuestros colegios, que impactaría a las personas que tenemos en el colegio, no. Ojalá no profesoras, pero va a impactar a las personas que ayudan a los niños con disabilidades, que ayudan en la lonchera, que ayudan con nuestros buses. Todas esas personas que apoyan a nuestros colegios, sus trabajos están en riesgo.
Y aclárame un segundito, ¿el impuesto iba a ser para los residentes del condado de Montgomery de un 6% o iba a ser
6
más
centavos.
sobre el se iba?
Sería 6 centavos específicamente para los colegios.
Ok, pero venía como parte de un número más grande y 6 centavos serían para los colegios o era solamente 6 centavos de impuestos.
6 centavos para los colegios y otros, um, sorry, Mark, it was 6 cents for schools and the other was that we proposed was
3.3%, so a tenth of a percent income tax increase.
Sí, serían dos diferentes impuestos, ¿cierto? Uno solo para los colegios y uno basado en los ingresos, que sería el 3.3%.
Ok, perfecto. Solamente para estar súper clara,
Sí, no es importante con
para
tantos
los
números
colegios.
en este momento.
Sí, cuando me dices para los colegios, ese impuesto se le iba a cobrar a los residentes y ese 6 iba a ir hacia los colegios o se iba a cobrar a los colegios. ¿Cómo iba a funcionar?
Iba a ir lo que recogiéramos de ese impuesto solo para los colegios, porque eso es también basado en el Estado. Ese impuesto solo puede ir al presupuesto de los colegios.
Ok, entiendo. O sea, que iría directamente del bolsillo de los residentes hacia el colegio, hacia las escuelas.
Exactamente.
Ok,
Yes.
perfecto. Eso me aclara mucho.
So
¿Algo más
just
que...
to clarify, Mark, I was clarifying for her that that 6 cents was just for schools. That was only
Right.
going to go to schools. that tax could only go for schools. And
Right.
that's why the council is currently struggling to cut other things because they did not want to move forward with this.
Right.
Okay, perfecto. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, I think I don't see any other questions here on the budget, so go ahead and
Okay.
finish up your message.
So where was I here? Um, so I think some of you know that the other day, some really racist and xenophobic remarks were in a video posted by Maryland delegates Mark N. Fisher and Brian Chisholm, accusing Delegate Chow Wu of being a spy for the Chinese government and mocking the way he speaks. They have no proof of anything. Delegate Wu has served the people of Howard and Montgomery County with seriousness and integrity since taking office, and he deserves better than this kind of garbage. At a time when the entire country is celebrating the sacrifices and achievements of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, to question someone's loyalty because they were born in one of the oldest and ugliest, because of where they were born, I mean, is one of the oldest and ugliest patterns in American politics. It's really disgusting. Asian Americans have dealt with that suspicion for generations. We've seen it during wars, during periods of economic fear, whenever politicians decide it's easier to divide us than to actually solve problems. The idea that someone can never fully belong here because of their background, their accent, is deeply damaging, and public officials ought to know better than to encourage it. As Shirley Chisholm said in 1973, racism is so universal in this country, so widespread and deep-seated, that it is invisible because it's so normal. Her words still matter because prejudice often hides behind jokes, casual accusations, and rhetoric people try to dismiss as politics. We should not pretend this behavior is harmless or normal. Of course, this behavior has been enabled by Donald Trump, who's, publicly says that unless you're white and male, whatever you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it if it's important because you're not qualified, that only white males are qualified for things. And it's just a stunning and horrifying point of view. But, when it's reflected in delegates in the state of Maryland, it's really disappointing. Racism and xenophobia don't have any place in the state legislature. Delegates Fisher and Chisholm owed Delegate Wu an apology. I appreciate that leaders from across the political spectrum have spoken out against this conduct, because this should not be a partisan issue. Montgomery County is stronger because of people from all over the world who've chosen to build their lives here. And we're not going to stay silent when residents or public officials become targets because of where they come from, how they speak, or what they look like. And this country has gone down that road before, and people in positions of leadership should understand the damage that it causes. Hopefully it'll cause them severe political damage in the next elections they run in. An update on the Potomac Interceptor is next. We are joining community and state health leaders in DC Water for an update on the Potomac Interceptor on May 18th at the Glen Echo Town Hall. This meeting will be focused on long-term restoration of the river. Leaders from the county's health and human services will be on hand to explain why some restrictions remain in place near the spill site. The latest sampling results will be shared, including a discussion of the recent sediment testing. It will be an opportunity to learn about latest developments in the ongoing cleanup and remediation efforts. Bringing any lingering concerns, and feel free to share feedback about the plan. The meeting's going to be at 7 p.m. For those who can only attend virtually, you can sign up now through the Maryland Department of Environment. Back in February, District of Columbia Mayor Muriel Bowser declared the spill an emergency and requested that the federal government pay for the spill-related costs. A request would also put FEMA in charge of coordinating long-term assistance. We look forward to an update on that situation, seeing the river return to normal so that summer boating and water activities can continue. And with all of that, if there are any questions left, I'm happy to take them now.
All right. Sean, do you have any updates from HHS? Or I think we're running really behind here, so I know.
Yeah, we're happy to really address these. I put in the chat the link if people want to virtually join that town hall about the Potomac Interceptor, or they're welcome to come in person. And Dr. Davis and myself will be there along with MDE. our county Department of Environmental Protection. So we're happy to answer these questions. And we look forward to, again, continuing to offer guidance on safely using the Potomac River and the land around it.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Any other questions for Mark or any of our other guests today about any other issues about Montgomery County? I don't see anyone's hands up, and so I think we're all good for today. Thank you, Mark, and I hope everyone has a great week.
Take care.